It's Lynn Oz, and in the news today on Ancient Origins, February 5th, 2014, initial DNA analysis of Pyrrhocus elongated skull released with incredible results. It says Pyrrhocus is a desert peninsula located within the Pisco province in the Ica region on the south coast of Peru. It is here where Peruvian archaeologist Julio Tello made an amazing discovery in 1928, a massive and elaborate graveyard containing tombs filled with the remains of individuals with the largest elongated skulls found anywhere in the world. These have come to be known as the Pyrrhocus skulls. In total, Tello found more than 300 of these elongated skulls, which are believed to date back around 3,000 years. A DNA analysis has now been conducted on one of the skulls, and expert Brian Forrester has released preliminary information regarding these enigmatic skulls. It is well known that most cases of skull elongation are the result of cranial deformation, and I will touch on that here in a moment with another article, but let's finish this one first. Head flattening or head binding, in which the skull is intentionally deformed by applying force over a long period of time. It is usually achieved by binding the head between two pieces of wood or binding in cloth. However, while cranial deformation changes the shape of the skull, it does not alter its volume, weight, or other features that are characteristic of a regular human skull. The Pyrrhocus skulls, however, are different. The cranial volume is up to 25% larger and 60% heavier than conventional human skulls, meaning they could not have been intentionally deformed through head binding or flattening. They also contain only one parietal plate rather than two. The fact that the skull's features are not the result of cranial deformation means that the cause of the elongation is a mystery and has been for decades. Well, it's not really a mystery when you consider all that has been being taught by people such as L.A. Marzulli about the elongated skulls and the fact that they were Nephilim. And your ancient Egyptians had the elongated skulls too, which is one of the reasons why many scholars who study the Nephilim and the fallen angels believe that the ancient Egyptians were of the Nephilim race. And again, in this next article, I will also address that. Mr. Juan Navarro, owner and director of the local museum called the Pyrrhocus History Museum, which houses a collection of 35 of the Pyrrhocus skulls, allowed the taking of samples from 5 of the skulls. The samples consisted of hair, including roots, a tooth, skull bone, and skin, and this process was carefully documented via photos and video. The samples were sent to the late Lloyd Pye, founder of the Star Child Project, who delivered the samples to a geneticist in Texas for DNA testing. The results are now back, and Brian Forrester, author of more than 10 books and an authority on ancient elongated headed people of South America, has just revealed the preliminary results of the analysis. He reports on the genetic findings. Now here's the kicker. Listen to this. It had mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA, with mutations unknown in any human primate, in any human, primate, or animal known so far, but a few fragments I was able to sequence from this sample indicate that if these mutations will hold, we are dealing with a new human-like creature very distant from Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and Denisovans. The implications are of cause huge. I am not sure it will even fit into the known evolutionary tree, the geneticist wrote. He added that if the Pyrrhocus individuals were so biologically different, they would not have been able to interbreed with humans. The result of this analysis is only phase 1 of many phases of analysis due to take place. The results need to be replicated and more analysis undertaken before final conclusions can be drawn. We will update when more details emerge. So here you go, scientific evidence. They ran these DNA tests. They even recorded it while they did it, and they came to the conclusion with the results of the DNA. I'll read that to you again. It had mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA, with mutations unknown in any human primate or animal known so far, But a few fragments I was able to sequence from the sample indicate that if these mutations will hold, we are dealing with a new human-like creature, very distant from Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and Denisovans. So science is now discovering, they won't call it Nephilim though, because, well, most of them don't believe in God. However, for those of us who study these things, we know exactly what this is and what we're dealing with. Now let me head on over to this other article to give you just a little more insight. And this is from a blog called Time No Longer. It says among the most bizarre findings of humanoid remains have been skulls with double rows of teeth and even some with horns. Besides physical remains, footprints are evidence of huge persons which have walked the earth. In Australia were found footprints measuring 2 feet long and 7 inches across the toes, spaced 6 feet apart, indicating a 12-foot tall person. Another set in the same region with a 10-inch toe span indicates a person 17 feet tall. Since pictures are reputed to be far more compelling than words, let's look at some. So they've got some pictures here, and it shows you the heights. So if you had an average human being, then some of your tallest Nephilim would have been about this tall. You see here, and then they've got a man, same thing. Footprints, there is a Nephilim. Okay, the mainstream explanation to why there should exist skulls which look like those above is that certain cultures made a practice amongst the nobility of intentionally deforming the skulls of their children using boards to flatten and elongate their heads. While it is true that some did this, it can't be applied to every instance of discovery of an elongated skull. Many of these specimens not only had an oddly shaped head, they had a larger brain capacity, which we just read about, how that can't be altered. This, of course, can't be accomplished by artificial deforming of the skull. Furthermore, one has to ask the question, what on earth compels a people to intentionally deform their skulls to look like this, and why is it attached to the idea of nobility? This is a feature that can be seen represented repeatedly in Egyptian depictions of royalty. It is important to factor in Egypt's own testimony about their nobility in that they held to the assertions that their rulers were in the beginning gods, and that the successive rulership was held by hybrids, the children of these gods. Egypt is not the last that can be seen of the presence of elongated skulls. In fact, it is a feature that is present, if not as prominent, in the European noble bloodlines. You can see a picture here. Princess of the House of Este, 1400s. We can perhaps safely assume this girl's head was not intentionally deformed in a bizarre primitive cultural tradition. The answer of the board deformed skulls also does nothing to explain a different sort of anomalous skull. Right here, you have ones that are long sideways as opposed to straight up and down. But I don't want to really get into that. We're talking about the elongated skull. So let's go back to our other article here. I mean, this is amazing. They have done a DNA test and proven that these were not humans and that there was no part of human in them. They could have only, um, cohabited with one another. Their existence was with one another, and they procreated with one another. As it said down here, let me go find it again. It says the implications are of cause huge. I am not sure it will even fit into the known evolutionary tree, the geneticist wrote. He added that if the Pyrrhocus individuals were so biologically different, they would not have been able to interbreed with humans. So it's an amazing find, the best proof of Nephilim yet. And again, this article was released today, and you're viewing it here on Ancient Origins.